Good afternoon. Notice of a special meeting of the City Commission of the City of Brownsville. Pursuant to Chapter 551, Title 5 of the Texas Government Code, the Texas Open Meetings Act, notice is hereby given that the City Commission of the City of Brownsville, Texas, in accordance with Article 5, Section 12 of the Charter of said city, will convene a special meeting on October 25th, 2022, at 1:15 p.m. in the City Commission chambers located on the second floor of the Brownsville City Hall, Old Federal Building, located at 1001 East Elizabeth Street. Members of the public who submitted a public comment form will be permitted to offer public comments as provided by the agenda and as permitted by the presiding officer during the meeting. A recording of the meeting will be made and will be available to the public in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. Mayor, it is 1:16. You may call the meeting to order.
Thank you. I'll call the meeting to order.
Next item, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. Next item, we have public comment period. Mayor, we have 8 public comment.
All right, very good. Got the
First
list?
one, I'm sorry. First, we have Mr. Erasmo Castro.
Mayor, real quick, just as a procedural matter, we do have 8, so we just need a motion to extend the time period beyond the 15 minutes.
We have a
I'll
motion.
move.
So move.
We have a motion. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, motion passes. Sir, you know the routine. Just tell us your name and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, City Commission. My name is Erasmo Castro. And one of the issues that you'll be speaking about today is in regards to the fees raised and the other funds that were collected. One of the things that we have learned is that, we are going to get, the 22 rate back, and that is greatly appreciated. A lot of that has been made mention is in regards to the monies that have been left over from Tenasca. As a member of the community and speaking for several other individuals, we are not only interested in receiving or getting a refund back in regards to the money that was left over. We also would like to take into consideration all the money that was taken from the citizens of Brownsville throughout all this time. And we've heard the arguments in regards to saying that it would be impossible that some of these monies were already given back to the individuals of Brownsville in regards to a discount or a reduced rate. We don't feel that that is enough. There's several different opinions in regards to how much money should be returned to the citizens of Brownsville. I actually saw some footage of individuals requesting that not only the 118 million or the 135 million, but also that money with interest because of all this time that it had been taken away. And we don't want to sound completely unreasonable, I think it would be very difficult to determine exactly how much money, how much would have been gained. But we should take into account that the monies that were taken under false pretense. They were taken with deceit, and we were fooled into thinking that we were going to get great benefit from Tenasca. So one of the demands that we have is that the full amount that was taken from us be returned to us. We also request that anyone that had anything to do with this, be brought before justice, be served to anyone that had any knowledge of this deceit. And also, again, safeguards be placed in every single board committee that handles any type of money or funds from the citizens of Brownsville so that this never, ever happens again. And again, don't want to sound negative about everything. We do appreciate all the first steps that have been taken. We just want for there to be follow-up in regards to the first steps. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Just saw Pastor Brad walk in. Pastor, if you're able, can you do an invocation for us? Even though it's right in the middle of public comment, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, sorry for my tardiness. I've been running like crazy. Let's all stand for the prayer and remain standing for the pledge after. Father God, we thank you that when we seek you, with our whole heart. You set things right in us, you draw us to you. You set things right in our families, and you set things right in our city. Lord, we see some of that happening, and we thank you for it. And we ask you to lead and guide our mayor, our city commissioners here today, the PUB board, and everybody involved to do the very best for the city of Brownsville. And in all these things, we glorify you. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen. Let's take a short moment of silence where we can all add our prayers to what has already been spoken. Amen.
Thank you. You already did the pledge. Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. John Shergold.
Shergo, welcome, sir. You'll have 3 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, and always seem to follow the pastor. So I wanted just to talk about, we were talking a little bit about religion here. From what I can understand, I'm not a biblical expert, but I remember a passage when I was a young guy studying the good book when Jesus saw the injustice and the temples had become unholy. And we all remember that point that Jesus Christ at that point became very hostile and very angry, very hostile. And what did Jesus do? He went and he turned over the unholy money changers and their money changing businesses because they had made those temples unholy. They had made those temples unholy. Now, my mom, she was an educated person. She's still alive. She's 87. She lives with me now. She used to tell me and my brother something I never forgot. I'd go in the kitchen at night and I'd see some cookies in there. And I'd think my mama didn't see me. I'd go in there and I'd reach in that cookie jar and I'd pick that cookie out and then mom would tell me next day, did you take any of them cookies? I said, no, ma'am, I didn't. I was about 7, 8 years old. One time I did it, my mama was watching me. And she said, did you take those cookies? I said, no. And she says, well, I saw you do it. I said, well, I did take them out. It sure is a lot easier when you take those cookies out of the jar and your mama sees you, well, you're going to get caught. And that's basically what I'm trying to say here, what happened in Tenasca. I would love to see the moral conscience of this commission, with all due respect, to put an item on the agenda and refer this matter over to a criminal prosecuting authority. That would be something that I think the good Lord Jesus would probably say is trying to stop the temples from being turned over. And, I've been a member of the bar for 27 years, and I ran for office a couple of times and I didn't win. But you know what? There's a reason and purpose for everything in life. But I also, as a former prosecutor many years ago, said always follow the money. I was always taught that when I was trying to seek justice. Why are some meetings being held at the same time yesterday between PUB and the city? Why was that scheduled that way? Transparency? Maybe, maybe not. Why is it that we have a charter committee? Let's put the people, just closing here, let's put those folks in a random sample. Let's bring them in, make them apply, then pick out those people that want to serve on the charter committee. Let's don't handpick them.
Thank you, Mr. Shergo.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Next, we have Agripina Gomez.
Good afternoon, everyone, Commissioner, Mayor, Commissioner, sorry. So again, from my work with the community and what people tell me as an organizer, working in the colonias and doing projects like street lights, drainage. People right now, they're hurting and they do want somebody else on that board. People are telling me yes, it's good, the 29 million, but they want all their money back. Me, I personally talk to them. They share their stories, how they struggle, how they have to sell their belongings, pawn stuff, get a second job. Ellos están batallando y quieren que se haga lo correcto, que pongan otra persona y que quiten a la señora Sandra. Y also, right now, we have, a lot of opportunity to look into the future and to see what we can do in programs. Like I mentioned before, weatherizing homes, things like that, that is gonna make people, that is gonna save people on their electric bills. We know we have a lot of old houses here. We can have those programs. That's gonna help the people of Brownsville save on their bills. And yeah, so I'm just sharing the concerns from the community and what they want. And I ask you, to do the right thing. Right now is the opportunity to do the right thing and get the trust from the community back and look into programs that it's gonna help the community in the future. Thank you.
Next, we have Rosalba Guzman.
Welcome, ma'am. Just tell us your name and you'll have 3 minutes, please.
Hola, buenas tardes.
Sí, buenas tardes.
Mi nombre es Rosalba y estoy aquí como líder comunitario en nombre de mi colonia. Somos varios, más de 300, más de 500 familias. Y formando un grupo me di cuenta y tenía preguntas continuas de por qué está subiendo la luz. Tenemos biles muy grandes, al grado que llegamos a llegar a un acuerdo, pues hay que hacer actividades para pagar el alto costo. Esto se fue viendo mes tras mes, no sabíamos lo que estaba pasando hasta que después con las noticias nos damos cuenta de que atrás de esta problemática, hubo una acción por dichas personas y ahora sabemos que hay una cantidad de dinero que se está viniendo para atrás para beneficiar a las personas dañadas, pero yo creo y confío en las leyes, confío en nuestros representantes, que se haga lo justo y que no solamente sea una parte del dinero que se perdió, sino toda la cantidad completa, porque eso es lo justo. Porque cuando nosotros pagamos una parte del bill, ¿les quitan o no les quitan la luz? Tiene que ser el pago completo. Entonces, si aquí hubo un daño, yo creo que se debe restituir la cantidad completa y que dichas personas responsables se les restituya de sus cargos. Tengan una buena tarde.
Next, we have María Isabel Rincón.
Okay, gracias.
Next, we have Sig Silva.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Ezequiel Silva, a resident, lifelong, born here in Brownsville, Texas. I know that we're all here because we're very disappointed in what's happening and very upset, pissed off, basically, for being considered that we did not know what was happening at the point where a lot of people in sitting government at PUB actually think that we're stupid and deserve crumbs when everybody else are eating steak. I know that some of you here, or one of you here, said that we have to be fair with PUB and allow the term due process, which is a legal term for when a criminal gets arrested and has to have their day in court. But I also want to give you guys the word also, due diligence. The due diligence is when you appoint somebody, and I know some of you all appointed some people yesterday and have appointed these people to the board. Have you all ever checked if they owe child support? I know some of the people that were appointed might owe still tens of thousands of dollars in back pay. Those mothers are the ones that we're trying to protect here. Those mothers are the ones that, when you have a deadbeat dad that doesn't pay the bills, it's up to them to provide for the children that two people combined had it. but only one is responsible for them. The other one doesn't want to be responsible. But they're also responsible for the rent. They're also responsible for the utility bills, for their welfare, for their clothing, for the school supplies, for their transportation to and from school and from work. Also, they have to pay insurance, they have to pay all this stuff. And we're electing these people, well, you guys, and you all are appointing people without doing your due diligence. Do they owe PUB bills? Are they PUB ratepayers? Do they owe, or are they really the disconnect? Because why? This could be influenced through forms of quid pro quo, where they could be enticed how to vote away. Don't just appoint somebody because, oh, by the way, this person might not be my political opponent come next time that I run for reelection. Oh, this person could give me a couple of votes. I'm just gonna throw him there, and that way he's one of the, or she's one of the people of the community. No, they're not. They're just another of the same being put into the same pool, and we're not gonna get any positive results. Why? Because we don't trust you guys that trusted those people. A lot of you guys aren't here that appointed those people, but some of you were here, and some of you did appoint those. And we do not see you guys holding those people accountable yet, because those are supposed to be your eyes and your ears. And Ms. Rubalcaba made a good point. They're supposed to be an extension of you, so they actually represent you. And they're supposed to represent us. You're supposed to represent us. So why aren't you holding these people accountable? If they did not tell you the truth, then get them out. Get somebody that's gonna represent us, that are gonna be truthful to us, so that we could believe the audits and whatever reports you give us. Because right now, nobody's believing anything that comes out of your all's mouth.
Thank you, Mr. Silva.
Next, we have Susan Rubalcaba.
Hello, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. I am here today to continue my urging that the current chair of PUB Board, Sandra Sines, be removed immediately. There is no secret that Ms. Sines is much more than a passing acquaintance with the ex-Mayor Martinez, who is without a doubt part of the Martinez-Brusiak Tenasca tag team. Last night, Commissioner De Los Santos appeared on a local podcast and stated that we, the people, needed to give him an example of a criminal act. Any justification? Show me one vote, he says, where she broke the law. Commissioners, a conflict of interest isn't always and almost never is a criminal act. It is an ethical one. But I would ask you this: are we going to wait for that vote where the law is broken? Or are we going to follow the City of Brownsville's Code of Ethics and prevent the people from getting screwed over again? A conflict of interest occurs when an entity or individual becomes unreliable because of a clash between personal or self-serving interest and professional duties or responsibilities. Such a conflict occurs when a company or person has vested interest, such as money, status, knowledge, relationships, or reputation, which puts into question whether their actions, judgment, or decision-making can be unbiased. Let me repeat. A conflict of interest occurs when a person's or entity's vested interests raise a question of whether their actions, judgment, and/or decision-making can be unbiased. Sandra Sines absolutely can't make an unbiased decision regarding any aspect of Tenasca. I would go as far as to say she was the Mayor Martinez's secretary at the time Tenasca's deceitful web was being weaved and the people of Brownsville were being lied to. Therefore, she was potentially privy to emails, meetings, and phone conversations that included Mayor Martinez, and I doubt she was not aware of some of the Tenasca secrets. Therefore, I urge this commission to put this to a vote. If you ignore it, it will speak volumes. The people want a fair and swift approach without any possibilities of a conflict that would influence how the PUB board votes as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Laura Cisneros.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners and everybody. I wasn't going to speak today because I've said a few things that I've had to say in the last few meetings at PUB. But you all, many of you know I'm a physician, and I took an oath to be a healer, do no harm, and to help everybody I can. And just prior to the meeting, I received a phone call from a lady stating that she has pneumonia, her 2-year-old has pneumonia, and twice this month, Mayor, they've turned off her electricity. And why I bring it up for everybody is because I think you mentioned maybe about a week ago, and I believe you, but maybe you aren't aware, that they're still cutting people off. They turned off her electricity yesterday at 4:30. She said they didn't even give me an opportunity to talk to PUB at that time. And so she sits in her house, and I could hear her coughing and wheezing and going, and she said, and my 2-year-old had fever all night, and they don't only just turn off the electricity, they turn off the water. How cruel is that? Let's punish them, right? People who've done nothing wrong. And so she went, they turned off her electricity for like 2 weeks in the early part of October. Then she went to some agency to see if they could give her assistance, and they said, for us to help you, your electricity has to be on. And since it's off, we cannot give you any assistance. And then yesterday, lo and behold, at 4:30, they shut her off. And I thought we had said, and you had agreed, we're not going to turn people off. And my question to you and all the commissioners is, have we reinstated everybody that's without electricity? Do you know? Has everyone's lights been turned on again? And so you leave them without the ability to cook, the ability to flush their toilet, to drink water. And she's got a child that needs insulin. She's got 3 children. And so you turn off everything, and she said their medications, they can't even get their medications because they're supposed to be refrigerated. My last question to all of you is, if someone were to die, would we, the city, be held responsible for wrongful death? I'm not an attorney, you are. There's a couple attorneys in the audience, but I think the city would be. Because through no fault of the people, especially since we know of everything that's going on, they get their electricity, their water shut off willy-nilly. She said, I owe about $1,200, and they want me to pay $450 before I can even get it reconnected. So please, Mayor, I'm asking you, you have taken the oath of, I want to help the city, and I believe you do, and I believe you all do. Let's really help people right now. They're struggling.
Your time's up, I'm sorry.
Yeah. The cost of living is very high. We all know it, and this is making matters worse. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Next item, we have work session. Item number 1, update on proposed use of fees, rates, and other funds collected to support the now terminated Tanasca project, including proposed uses and/or distribution of the Tanasca Equity Fund.
Or good afternoon, Commissioners and Mayor. I don't
Good
know if-
afternoon. You can we raise the mic up a little bit? So we can,
See if the podium is.
yeah, the
set on its
podium
side
moves,
also.
doesn't it?
There's a button to your right. And that's the side.
Oh, okay.
Hopefully that'll do. I don't know if anybody on your all staff is looking to present or say something first, but if not, I'll jump.
Do we have anybody on the city side that's presenting on this?
No, Mayor.
Okay.
All right, well, I don't have any prepared remarks for today, but I did want to provide an update on last night's PUB meeting, and also provide an opportunity for the commission to provide input as well as ask any questions. I'm here as a board member, as a PUB ratepayer, and as a citizen of Brownsville. And we also have PUB senior staff here as well, and some of their department staff as well that can address any questions and I think more importantly, take notes of any suggestions or ideas that may come either from the commission or from the public. And I would like to state, given that we just went through the public comment period, that the PUB board appreciates all of those that have spoken at our meetings. We've had an active public comment period in these last couple of meetings, and I think I can speak on behalf of the entire board in saying that those comments are helpful, that communication is helpful, and I believe that it's an important part of the process that we're taking at this time to bring this to a resolution. So with that said, I'll jump into a couple of things regarding last night's meeting. We had two items on our agenda for open meeting. The first was similar to an item that we have tonight or today, which is the discussion of the Tenaska Equity Funds. And like I mentioned last night, the item was really the beginning of an important dialogue, not only amongst the PUB board, but more importantly, with the community and hopefully with the city commission as well. I think it's important to start with what I believe we all agree on, or at least what I think we've reached a consensus on in terms of PUB board, city commission, and the community. And that's that there are funds that were raised for a project that has been terminated that should be given back to the community. And I think in general, based on our conversations at the PUB board level, and what I've heard from the commissioners and from the community, that seems to be something that we can all agree on. There's money that has to be given back. And then having agreed on that, I think the next two steps or the next two questions that we have to look at and that we're focusing on at the PUB board level and at the committee level is one, how much? And I think the PUB equity, the Tenaska Equity Fund has been pretty well publicized, and the amount has been out in the public for some time now, and that's the $29 million that has been sitting separately within PUB accounts. And then recently, as mentioned in the CRI audit, and as was discussed, I believe last week at a city commission meeting, it was mentioned that there are some funds that were transferred to the city as part of the PUB city transfer, which my understanding, I think it was Commissioner Cowan that brought it up at the last meeting, and I think I saw multiple heads not in agreement last week, should probably be discussed as well as to whether or not that'll be included in the amount of funds that is returned to the community. I think we're still working on those estimates, but preliminary numbers put that amount somewhere in the range of $11 million. And so if that's the case, I think it's important that we look at the pot as a whole and think about it. If it's 29 plus 11, if we're looking at $40 million, then let's start working with that number. If that number needs to be tweaked or adjusted, if we need to sit down, have our staff sit down with city staff to work through the numbers and make sure we understand what that amount is and make sure that the commission is comfortable with that number, then I think we can do that relatively quickly. But I think it's important that we get to the right amount. It's so that we're all working with the right number from the start. And then the second question, again, assuming that we all agree on the fact that this money should be returned to the community, to our households, then the second question is how do we go about doing that? And that, as I shared last night, I think that's a question where we would greatly benefit not only from city commission input, being that some of that money is currently sitting in city commission accounts. But more importantly, from community input in terms of, how do we go about it? I think there are multiple things that need to be looked at. There's an example, and this is just an example. It's similar but not identical, but it's something that we can look at. San Antonio City Council recently approved a budget back in September, which included, amongst other things, an electricity bill rebate. San Antonio, much like us, has an MOU, has a municipally owned utility, CPS Energy. So they own their utility just like Brownsville owns their utility. Well, San Antonio City Council approved a $50 million electric rate rebate. And again, it's similar, not identical. Our circumstances are different because in our case, this is money that was collected over a period of time several years ago. Before most of you were on the commission and before I was on the board. So it's a different situation. But I think it at the very least gives us an opportunity to see some of the questions that were raised and some of the concerns that were addressed, some of the feedback that they received from their community, and may put us in a position to learn from what worked and what didn't work, so that we can move as quickly as possible towards a solution for our community. Just as an example, I'll give you two quick ones with San Antonio so that you can just, we can start it, or we can use it to brainstorm. But one of the things San Antonio did, and the mayor brought this up at our meeting last night. One of the things that San Antonio did was say, okay, we've got $50 million that we want to give back to the community. We're going to set 15% of that aside for low-income families. $7.5 million. And I'm not sure how they defined low-income families. I don't know where they drew the line, but they said that's going to go into a separate account. That's going to go to help the families that need it the most. And then the rest, we're going to distribute as a credit, lump sum credit to the community, and they had their formula for doing that. Personally, I think 15% is a good start. I think Brownsville can do better. I think we should, that's an option that we should look at and we should consider. If it was up to me, I think it'd be 100% so that we can make sure that that money goes to the families that need it most. As you all are well aware, depending on whose numbers you use, anywhere from 20 to 25% of Brownsville's households live under the poverty level. If you look at single mothers, that number doubles. So somewhere between 40 and 50% of single mother households live under the poverty level. And if you look at single mothers that are renting, that number nearly triples to about 60%. So clearly, our community needs as much help as possible. And so if we can take a look at that and consider setting aside some of those funds for our low-income families and making sure that we help our most vulnerable families and have as big of an impact as possible with those families as quickly as possible, I think it would go a long way. Again, San Antonio started at 15. I think at the very least we can start at 25. And quite honestly, personally, as an individual, I would say we should even consider 100%. One of the other things that San Antonio did that I think is something that we should look at is that once they set up their program and they decided what the pot was, so 85% in one pot, 15% in the other, they also gave the individuals that were receiving a credit in the general pot, in the 85%, they gave them the option to opt out. In other words, if you are to receive a credit, you can opt out and say, I don't want the credit. Instead, put my credit into the low-income pool so that you can help out more families. I think that's something that we should also look at. It's just an example of something that I think San Antonio has done. I'm sure there are other communities out there that we can look at, but that's an example of something that we should probably brainstorm on, ask the community how they feel about it, and then consider putting it into our recommendations. I'll go on the record as saying that that's something that I not only believe in, but if that's something that we offer our community, then my family would choose to opt out and contribute our credit to the low income pool. Because I think that we should do whatever we can to help the families that need it most. So that's one example of a community that's already been through this, and that I believe we can learn from. I think the PUB board at this time is looking for as much feedback and as much input, and we're trying to get it as quickly as possible so that we can sit down and evaluate the options and work with the city commission and work with the community to try and put feasible proposals on the table as quickly as possible and have as significant an impact as we can with the families, especially the families that need it most. It's been said multiple times by the community. I've heard it from commissioners and I've heard it from PUB board members, and I believe it myself. Our utility doesn't belong to the PUB board. It doesn't belong to this city commission. It belongs to our community. And I feel very strongly that this process requires the input of our community so that we can ensure that whatever steps we take them with our community's opinion in mind. And so we didn't come today to offer the perfect solution. In fact, we don't have a solution for you right now, and that's by design. I think what we need to do first is listen to our community, and they've been doing a great job of speaking up recently, and I applaud them for that, and I've encouraged them to speak up. I've done it at our board meetings. I did it last night. And I do it when I run into them in the halls or in the parking lots. I think it's important for them to speak up. I think it's important for the community to participate. I don't know the best way to go about that. Last night we had an individual who mentioned, hey, you should do town halls. Great. If that works, let's do it. We can do town halls, we can do workshops, we can do surveys, we can do whatever maximizes the community input so that we can get as many ideas on the table as quickly as possible, sort through them, and find the ones that work. And then again, get the community's feedback, both positive and negative. We're very open to criticism to make sure that we arrive at the best options. And so that's where we are right now. I think the PUB board is open for any and all suggestions. The staff knows that this is a priority for us. We also approved last night the special joint PUB-COB committee so that we could work or improve the collaboration with the city and have this item as our priority. And so that we can move as quickly as possible to help our community and to help our families as quickly as possible. In addition to that, the Finance Committee, which I chair, has called a meeting for this Friday at 12 o'clock, which was the quickest that we could call a meeting given the 72-hour rule. That will be a meeting that is open to the public. We invite all members of the public to show up if they're able to. I realize noon on a Friday isn't the best option, but we thought it was better than 5:30 on a Friday because we also understand that families want to spend their weekends together. And so we're going to have that meeting on Friday. It's going to be open to the public. It's open to the city commission. It's open to city staff and anybody else that wants to show up to put ideas on the table. For us, the intention of that meeting is to take all of the recommendations that we heard last night, that this commission heard last night, that we heard today, that may come out of this meeting today, whether it be at this moment or via direct conversations with our staff or emails or phone calls or text or whatever it takes. But the idea is to be able to sit down on Friday with our staff and get to work as quickly as possible. My hope is that board council and city attorney are able to meet or have a conversation at some point this week so that we can figure out the details on that joint committee and figure out how quickly we can call a meeting. Hopefully next week. I mean, I'm guessing that given the 72-hour rule, Friday is out of the question. My son has requested that we not schedule anything for Monday afternoon because he'd really like to go trick-or-treating. But if that's the case, then by all means, we'll meet on Monday afternoon. I mean, that's about it. We're ready to get started. We're trying to do our best to listen. We want to make sure that this is a dialogue, not only with the City Commission, most importantly with our community, so that they can participate in this process and we arrive at a solution as quickly as possible that has the maximum impact for our community. So with that said, I'll open it up for any feedback or questions at this time. If I can't answer your questions, we've got staff here that can do their best to answer the questions. And if they can't, then rest assured that they're writing everything down so that we can get to work on it and get those answers, not only for you as commissioners, but for the community as well, as quickly as possible.
Mayor, I'd like to go first.
Yeah, hold on, before you go, Commissioner, I think this work session really, I wanted to accomplish a couple of things. One is to get a summary, which is why I invited Vice Chair Sampaio to talk to us today, just to give us a little bit of a summary of what occurred yesterday at the PUB meeting. I got there late because of our meeting. And what I was able to get was that the PUB board really is looking for direction and wanting to hear from the commission as well as far as the best use of the Tenasca equity money, which is 29 million. I expressed my opinion yesterday regarding that this money should be given back. Some of it should be set aside, like Patricio said, for low-income and elderly individuals for assistance with their bills. I want to shortcut this and try and do this as quickly as possible.
Absolutely.
You know, as far as town halls, I've stated as well, town halls are great, but I think everybody's pretty much told us where they want to be, and that is give it back.
Yep.
So, you know, I'd like to accomplish that as quickly as possible. So really, I also wanted to have a good dialogue with the commission, hear from the rest of the commission as far as their thoughts on the best use of this. Ultimately, it's a PUB board decision, but I think having the feedback of the commission helps. And then also if Mike or anybody from PUB has any presentations regarding the impact of returning these funds to bills, et cetera, I'd like to hear that. I know we've been privy to that at the PUB board level, but I'd like for the commission to also know some of that impact as well. So if Mike has anything, I'd like to hear that. I'm sure the rest of the commission would like to hear that. I know Commissioner Tetra wanted to speak, but if Mike or anybody else from PUB has any additional information, I think I'd certainly like for the commission to hear that as well.
Yeah, we discussed it internally, and I asked Mike to hold off on that presentation for the reason that I think it'd be important to get a better understanding of how we want to approach the distribution of those funds. Obviously, if we're talking about 29 million, it's one thing. If we're talking about 40 million, it's a different thing. You know, the previous presentations that have been shared with us by staff have looked at, you know, the possibility of a bill credit distributed over the course of, you know, multiple months, 12 months, 24 months. I'm not sure that is really what this commission or the board or this community is looking for. And so I felt it was premature to share that information at this time because it's going to look different. It's going to look different if it's 29 versus 40. It's going to look different if we have a set aside for low-income families versus if we don't. It's going to look different if that set aside is 25% or if it's 50%. And again, it's going to look different if you do it over 24 months or if you do it in one lump sum like San Antonio did. And so the reason Mike's not presenting that tonight is because I asked him to hold off on that until we had feedback from the commission and from the community. And if the feedback from the commission is, hey, we want to see that, you know, we want to see these three options with these, you know, parameters, then we can put that together and share that with you. But I just felt like sharing one slide, which showed one number, spread over 24 months was probably not the best thing to do at this point, because that slide was prepared without community feedback, without city commission feedback. And we take our statement very seriously. We want as much engagement as possible and as much information as possible so that we make sure that what we're providing and the proposals that we're putting on the table are feasible proposals and take into account what the community wants.
I
So
appreciate that. And
Mike's not presenting, but that's my fault. Not
okay,
his.
well, I appreciate that, but with all due respect, that's not really a decision you get to make.
Yep.
Whether or not we hear from Mike, so that's really something I defer to the commission on, if they want to hear any of that.
Sure.
But I know Commissioner Tetra did want to speak.
So I just wanted to give you my feedback and my perspective. I really appreciate you being here today. You're not the chair of PUB, right?
I'm not the chair, I'm the vice chair.
But I really appreciate that you're here to meet us face to face and try and solve this.
Thank you for the
publicly
invitation.
Here in the light. So I appreciate that. But as somebody who's been here from the beginning, I have a very different perspective. I remember sitting at those first meetings and being told about the rate increments and asking, why do we have to set these rates now? Like if we haven't sold any energy, why do we have to force these rates if we can't see in the future if it's going to work or not? So from that point, I started to see the unfairness cast on the ratepayers. And so sitting here today and after seeing the results of the audit, which some might say are arguable, whatnot, the facts are the facts, that ratepayers overpaid for many, many years, and that was not fair. So my perspective and my feedback is that every single account that PUB has had from then on that was taken advantage of for this project that never came, I feel like a third-party auditor, not PUB, not the city, a third-party, completely unbiased person needs to go and look at every single account and see exactly what account was overcharged, because we all have different size houses, we have businesses that are different. And I just feel personally that we owe that fairness to every single person that was charged those rates. So while I do appreciate other models that San Antonio has and whatnot, the only light that we have seen came from a third-party audit. So I would just ask, and my feedback is that every single home and every single account that was opened is treated fairly. We have people that have not been paying since 2013, and how do they fall into that pool?
Right.
So that's what I ask. And I appreciate you coming here. I know that you guys were not the ones that started this. I'm one of the very few people that can say, I saw the unfairness from the beginning. So I very strongly stand here and ask that we do this in a way that everyone is treated fairly, and I ask that everybody be made whole. Whatever was taken should be returned 100%. That's how I feel.
We appreciate that, that input, Commissioner.
There's only so much money left in the pot, but it needs to be found. And something needs to be done because it was extremely unfair and deceitful.
We appreciate that input.
And I hate to tell you that because I know it wasn't you, but
I'm not taking it
That's what I
personally,
feel.
but I'm on the board now, and I'll make sure that we work together, the PUB board with the city commission and the community, to try and get there.
thank you.
Mr. Sampaio, I think we did discuss yesterday also, and Mike can maybe elaborate on this, but to go back and look at all the accounts, we're talking about 10 years worth of accounts. I know that that's going to be something that's going to be difficult to unwind. I don't know if Mike can maybe help us a little bit on how many, I mean, this is, to go back to every account, I know is going to be, it's going to be something that's going to take a really long time.
Yeah, there are certainly challenges, and yeah, I'll give Mike an opportunity to address that. And like I said, I think before we start doing that, it's going to be important to say, well, what are the things that we want to look at? Because what we don't want to do is tell Mike and his team, all right, start doing this. And then 2 weeks later say, we changed our mind, now start doing this. And then 2 weeks after that, change our mind and start doing something else if we don't like it. Because the problem with that is that it'll take time. And Mayor, I think you mentioned it, right? You want to make sure that, or you're concerned with town halls or with some of those resources or tools, is that perhaps it can appear as if what we're trying to do is delay things. And it's critical that I clarify that. We are trying to move as quickly as possible. There's no intent here to delay. And in order to do that, I think it's important to be able to sit down and discuss what approaches make sense and which ones we really want to allocate staff time to. Because you're right, if you go back, I don't know the exact number of our accounts, but let's say 50,000 accounts, and you start looking at, 10 years of records, and you start trying to figure out who was there in 2013, who was no longer there in 2013, but was there in 2014, who wasn't there in 2014, but 2015, so on and so on. What residents were living in one place and then moved to another place, or, have multiple accounts. Yeah, it can get messy really quick. You're right. And so to that point, I think that's why we want to be able to sit down, have this conversation with the commission, have this conversation with the community, and really identify the options that make the most sense going forward, so it can be an equitable solution. So with that, happy to hand it over to Mike so that he can answer any of your questions. And if there are any questions for me directly, I'm more than happy to address them. I'll stick around for a while afterwards. That goes for the commissioners, the mayor, and anybody from the public that's here. And then the finance committee, again, will be meeting at noon on Friday. And we'll be available there before the meeting, during the meeting, after the meeting, if there's any feedback or any concerns or recommendations that you all would like to share. So with that, thank you very much. I'll hand it over to Mike.
But I appreciate you coming by and accepting my invitation to come and talk to us. And I know it's hard to represent the PB board at times like this, but I really appreciate you coming by.
I'm happy to do it
Sure.
anytime, and happy to do it here at a city meeting, or do it individually if there's anything that'd like to be, that a commissioner would like to discuss individually, and that goes for the public as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Mike Perez. I'm the CFO for BPUB. So to address your question, Mayor, we did meet with staff this morning, and we started the process of data gathering. So we do have the information. We can go back to day one when the first rate increase became effective, April 1. Now, it is good to know, good to note for the commission and for our board that $29 million that was set aside early on as the rates came into place. So we collected $9 million in 2014, 10 million in 2015, and 10 million in 2016. That made up the 29 million, and we deposited into the capital improvement fund. So we can certainly, something for the commission and our board to consider is we can go back to those 3 years and identify every single account, how much their KWH usage was, and then allocate based on a formula, depending on who we want to give that money back to, right? And we can certainly do that. So that would be the approach if we want to go retro to the people that were affected at that point in time. But if the decision is that we want to include current customers or any customers that came into the system after 2016, the last time that we set aside that $10 million, then we can certainly do that. We'll have that data available, and it's really going to be once the committee, the dual committee meets and then decides on what options to take, we can certainly work with that. So we are gathering that data, and we'll be able to go back that far.
I understand that the 29 was the collections over 14, 15, 16, but to just look at the customers during that time, I don't think is the right approach if we're going to do it that way.
Yeah,
I think
it's up to, like I said, it's up to the commission. We can certainly gather data from day one through 2022. And based off of that, then determine an allocation back to our customers. So we will do whatever the committee decides.
We'll open up the floor to the commission.
And Mike, prior to the car rigs and Ingram audit, there had already been audits done of the monies, the financial aspect of Tenaska, correct?
Audits of, you mean our external audits? Correct.
So those records are available if we want to review those as we consider how to allocate these monies.
The actual, if you're looking, if you want to look at actual auditors' work papers, we would have to request it from the auditors. But the audit reports, yes, those we post on our website. They're available for anybody to review. It's a very comprehensive report, and it is available.
Thank you.
Mike, I have a question. When did the fuel subsidy start?
It started in April of 2016.
Because there, we have the 29 million that was raised and then another 30 million that was spent on the project, right? That 30 million that was spent did not come from the rate increases, or did it come?
No, the way it was set up, the actual expenditures that went into the project were spent from either current revenues or prior year surplus. None of the rate increases related to the Tenasca project were used to fund those expenses. So $29 million got set aside. Everything else that was collected through those rate increases was returned through the bill reduction program.
But obviously the 30 million could have been spent on something else that would benefit the community.
Yes.
I know that there's been different numbers out there as well as far as what was actually collected over the time frame, right? The audit itself mentions 118. I know that you've mentioned a number that's more in the $80 million range. Can you kind of help me with that or help?
Yeah,
us with that?
yes, sure, Mayor. So on page 7 of the CRI full report, that's where it mentions an $118 million of Tenasca-related rate increase revenue being generated through the end of August 2020, with 35 going towards expenditures, 29 Tenasca equity, and 54 million going back to the bill reduction program, to the customers through the bill reduction program. So like I had mentioned earlier to Mr. Collins' question, that $35 million was not spent from those rate increases. They were spent from either current revenues that we were generating at the time or surplus revenues. So in essence, we through August of 2020, we had only generated $83.5 million worth of Tenasca-related revenue. 29 equity, and the other 54.5 million went to the bill reduction program.
And then what about the 35 million for the expenditures? That's the gap there.
That's what I was alluding to, it's not actually 35, it was $30 million, but we used current revenues or prior year surplus to pay for that 30 million. And the way the report reads is that they were spent from Tenasca-related revenue, and they were not.
It was Tenasca-related expenses. Just,
Sorry,
it was a Tenasca-related expense, just not paid for through the revenues collected.
Correct.
And Mike, I know you don't have the presentation, but I know you've run some numbers as far as impact, potential impact. And I know we did some projections if 5 million, 10 million. And I know that the impact per month for the bills, average bill is going to be a couple dollars almost for every million. Is that ballpark more or less where we're at?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct.
Mike, one more thing I'll want to see, because I know the public will want to know, if we can look at over the course of time that rate increase was in effect and that those $83 million were collected, 83.5 million were collected, the fund transfers from PUB to the city of Brownsville those years, if we could determine what percentage of that fund transfer is attributable to the Tenasca rate increases.
That was 10% of whatever revenue was
10%,
generated from the
okay.
Tenasca.
So then it would be 8.35 million over.
Now again, that number that's being referenced in the CRI report is through August of 2020. As Mr. Sampaio just alluded, we're estimating around 110 million year to date that has been generated from those Tenasca-related revenue increases. So approximately $11 million has been transferred to the city. We're currently verifying those numbers.
Once we've got those verified, I'd like to see them.
Yes, sir.
Any additional input from the commission?
I just would like to see some fairness and transparency moving forward. It breaks my heart that this was done the way it was and that it took so long to get to this point. So I would just like to see fairness to the ratepayers. And I appreciate that you're helping us find that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Galansky?
In speaking to constituents and having them ask me questions about PUB, I've gotten the comment about, well, I want my money back but they're not PUB electric customers. Where I represent, part of my district is Magic Valley, part of it is PUB. And so they're under the impression that because they have PUB for water and wastewater, that they're also entitled to reimbursement. And so going forward, I would like for you all to clarify that. They're Magic Valley customers, so they would not be entitled. Because I think a lot of people are under the expectation, oh, we're gonna get our money back.
That's correct. So the refunds would go back to the electric PUB customers.
So I just, to my fellow commissioners that are on the committee, I'd like to more fully understand. It sounds like a huge amount of money. It is a huge amount of money, but when you divide it amongst all of the customers, it may not actually be that large. And so when you guys come back to discuss with us and we discuss again with you, I'd like to have a good understanding of what does that mean to the average ratepayer in terms of what kind of credit they'll see on their bill and so forth.
And we'll have that information once we get all that data that we're currently extracting.
And if I could piggyback on that, because I think that's a great point. I think I'd also like to see us break it down to where our ratepayers fall in different tiers, because we know we've got low income. And it would be very easy to say, well, the average PUB customer will get X. But I think our low income customers will probably be seeing a lot less than that because they didn't pay anywhere near as much as those on the higher end of PUB. So if we could show some tiers in there, I think that will help us paint the picture even better.
I'll have to check with our customer service department, but that might be a bit difficult because we don't identify in our Cayenta or billing system which are our low income customers.
Which are what, I'm sorry?
Our low income customers.
But
Income, that's not some data that we collect, but we can break it down by usage, right? And so that can serve as a proxy. It's not going to be exact, but it'll give you a better idea. And I think it can also be broken down so that you can see what's commercial, what's residential, and then again, broken down by usage. It's not going to be perfect, but it'll give you an idea. Another thing to throw out, again, I understand we're not San Antonio, and I'm not suggesting the San Antonio model, it's just an idea. But one of the things I believe they did with certain cases is that they capped it. They capped the credit to say, after this amount, the credit is capped, and whatever's left over keeps, stays in the pot for redistribution amongst the remaining ratepayers. And I think the intent was, and I don't want to speak for San Antonio City Council here, but I think the intent was to say, that we understand that the highest consumption is probably going to higher income families or businesses, and they were trying to kind of redistribute that so that some of the lower income families benefited from that as well. But again, that's something that we can take a look at and break down, and then we can work with whatever data we have and go from there.
Are you?
and we don't expect perfect at this point. I think we just expect fair.
Are you able to identify other examples besides San Antonio? I mean, the things that you've said make a lot of sense that they are doing, but are there other examples that we can all learn from?
So we brought that up at last night's meeting. I suggested San Antonio because it just happened. They approved their budget in September, and the city council, authorized this $50 million rebate through CPS. And there's a lot of, if you Google San Antonio CPS rebate, there's a lot of information that's publicly available. And so that's what I referenced last night. But I did ask staff to start looking at three different things. One is other MOUs or municipally owned utilities that have been in similar situations and how they've addressed it. Two is co-ops, which are similar to MOUs, kind of like Magic Valley, in that they aren't owned by investors. They're owned by, it's a cooperative that's owned by the ratepayers. And they tend to operate in such a way that their mission is to try and achieve the lowest rate possible for their ratepayers. And in the event that they have surplus funds at the end of the year, they're there may be some cases that we can look at to see how they've distributed that back to the ratepayers. And then finally, investor-owned utilities, which are, you know, your large corporate utilities. I don't know if there's any example of the large utilities ending up with a surplus and distributing it back to their ratepayers. I imagine that that typically goes to their investors. But I didn't think, I thought it wouldn't hurt to ask and to look into it. So staff has received that request, and I would hope that we have some more information on that as it becomes available.
I have a question. How long do you think it'll take for you to get these tiers going? When can we get that information? And for the board, when are you all going to name the committee? And when would this first meeting happen, basically? I think it's important for us to get this ball rolling.
Yeah, I'll let Mike speak to how long it would take to sift through the data. As for the board and the committee, under PUB rules, the chair is able to designate, or the chair designates committee members. And so at this time, I would imagine that it wouldn't take the chair more than a day or two to name those individuals. As is the case with the city commission committee, the mayor counts for both committees. And so we have 2 open spots in that committee. So as soon as we have those names, we'll make it available to the city commission. But I think that city attorney and board council can start conversations today as to what the best way forward would be to call a meeting. And I would guess that we could call one as early as next week to be able to have those discussions.
Thank you.
Yeah, so as far as the data, we just made the request this morning. So we got staff working on it right away, so it is priority. I'm hoping that because it's just an extraction of data from our billing system, that we should be able to generate that within a couple of days. But if there's any delays, we'll let our board and the commission know.
Yeah, because I think that's very important data for us when we do meet with this committee.
Exactly. So we're working on that.
And another piece of information I hope you can include is how many times homes were disconnected, because they obviously paid a very large fee to have it reconnected, and if that can be included as well.
Speaking of disconnects, there was a concern brought up earlier on disconnections. My understanding, based on previous statements to us, was that those disconnects had already stopped. So if we're hearing about disconnects that happen, I really am concerned about that and not happy about that. So I think, obviously, we're voting on the next item. But I know it was represented to us yesterday, or I think that those had already stopped.
Yes, that following day I did address that issue. So the disconnects did cease. I just was talking right now with Eddie. The only disconnects that are happening right now, if it's an electrical issue or it's a tampering issue. So I'm not too sure what's going on right now, but we're investigating.
Okay. All right.
I do have one more comment on this, and Mr. Sampaio, if you'll come back up, because this is going to be directed more to you as the vice chair. My concern, when you made the comment that committees are appointed by the chair over there, have you all spoken to your council about potential conflicts of interest over there? Because, and that's for board members, because with the current chair being someone who worked for someone who was named in the Tenasca audit, is that something that you all have looked at? Does it make sense for the chair to be unilaterally appointing this committee, or should the board be making that decision, or is the board vote required to ratify that? Because that would be a concern for me.
Yeah, that's a fair question, and I'd be more than happy to address it with council right after this meeting. That being said, I think there are multiple board members on the PUB board, and I would hope that this commission is in agreement that they're not conflicted. Or
not all of them.
If you feel that some of them are conflicted, I would hope that you don't feel they're all conflicted. If you feel that that's the case, please make it known to the city attorney, and so he can share that with board council. But I'd be happy to make that call as soon as we're done with this meeting.
Thank you.
And we've had an opportunity to receive input from the community.
On that point, then, I would suggest that if any members of the commission feel that there's conflicts, send that over to PUB through our council so that can be addressed.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, so for me, on the equity fund, I really see it as kind of two different things. One is the formula itself. What kind of formula do we use to give money back? And then is any of it going to be carved out, which I believe is a good thing for individuals that are at risk, low income, elderly, others. And I'm sure you can find the data on the disconnections and who's more at risk for that. So I think some of that money should be set aside for that. I also think that the rest of it, the corpus of that, should be dispersed. The question becomes, what is the formula? And I think we still need to kind of look at that and get some more data on that. And then secondly, it's a time frame. Certainly, I think it should be done as quickly as possible in light of everything we know now. And I just don't see it justifiable as waiting that much longer, being that people are suffering with disconnections, which we're taking action on, but also the bills have gone up, right? And we understand why the bills have gone up, but the fact is they've still gone up. And if they go up, people are going to have a harder time paying. So that's why I'm really advocating for this to be done as quickly as possible. So I'd like to look at certainly the formula and the time frame.
I'm not sure if it's possible, but maybe before the holidays.
Definitely before the holidays, before Halloween.
Yeah.
No, but certainly as quickly as possible. I think there's a need for some of this data to make
This is
a
priority
really
for
informed
us.
decision. I think that's critical. But once we have that, I think we can make a better decision. Again, this is something where our input is valuable, but the PB board is going to be making that decision. So if there's any concerns or anything else, any other ideas you have, please share those.
And I'd just like to add, I think, like with any big decision, communication is going to be very important with the community because I feel, and I'm just looking at social media, and I think that's not a great place to look at times for stuff like this, but the majority of people believe that their bills nowadays, their high bills relate to, a big percentage relates to Tenasca. And in reality, I think the analysis is going to show it's not going to be that big of a number, right? And I know right now PUB has about 55,000 customers and about 18,000 are commercial and industrial, more or less, right?
I'll need to go back and verify.
Something like that,
The
right?
total
And,
comes-
and if I would imagine the analysis is going to come back that the commercial and the industrial are going to be a big percentage of the electricity that was used during that time.
Yes.
And they're going to get the majority of this rebate. So it's just going to be a communication, you know, it's going to be very important, you know, as a city and as you know, from PUB.
I do think that once we identify the formula, I think there should be an opt-out ability as well for those customers who choose to opt out of any sort of rebate, any sort of credit, any sort of refund. I think that's something important as well.
Totally agree.
Any other input? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you very much.
Thanks again for having us, and we're available at any time to come back and have, you know, any additional updates. And you all are always welcome at our meetings as well, be it the Finance Committee or any of the other committees or our full board meetings. And look forward to setting up those special committee, the joint meetings as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional presentations from staff regarding this item? Are we good?
Not the workshop.
Okay. Next item then. Bless you.
Next item is items for individual considerations. Approval on second and final reading on ordinance number 2022-1534-A concerning Chapter 102 of the Code of Ordinances entitled Utilities, and which provides for a temporary moratorium on the enforcement of sections 102-76, penalty for delinquent payment, and 102-77, disconnection for non-payment, and to have an expiration date of February 28, 2023.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I do think it's important for us to find a way to continue to call the families, even though you're not disconnecting. If not, this is gonna get to February 28th, and come March 1st, hopefully, we spoke about extending it, but it's gonna be a big bill to pay. So let's try to continue to find a way to at least call and offer payment plans and do the rest, because if we wait till the end of this, if it's March, or if it's May, or if it's June, or whenever it may be, that's gonna be a huge bill. So I think it's important for us to consider that as PUB.
Definitely. I agree with that. Any other discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Move to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn in a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Stand adjourned. Thank you. Thank you all for being here.
It is 2:31. Meeting has ended.